Well, the good thing about having no, that one didn't work. The good thing about having a franchise about no, that's not gonna work. The good thing no. The good thing about having a series about time travel is that when you mess up, you can go back and change things. Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to an all-new Talkin Movies. As always, I am your host, the real Geno Reynolds, and today we're going to be talking about the newest reboot thing that is being done to the Terminator franchise. Today we're going to be talking about Terminator Dark Fate. I will warn you, there's probably going to be some spoilers in this review. That being said, what I'm about to tell you, it comes off pretty obvious in the movie, and then some of the stuff I'm going to tell you happens right near the first. But again, this is going to be a spoiler-ish review. What this movie is about, they have eliminated Terminator 3. They have eliminated Salvation. They've eliminated Genesis. And, of course, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, the TV show. And what we have here is it takes place a year or so, maybe 2 years after T2, where Sarah and her son have stopped Judgment Day. They've destroyed Skynet before it even happened. So they think everything's fine, but being that time travel in this universe is weird, things that happen in the past, like say, you know, how was the Terminator still there when they destroyed it kind of thing. They have this whole explanation on how things that some time wave kind of thing that says, well, even if it hadn't been created and we sent something back in the past, it stays there. It's like, okay, that's just how we're going to explain it away. Well, anyway, this movie answers a question of the question of why did Skynet never send more than one Terminator? Well, they did. Come to find out that they sent another T-800 to track down John Connor. And even though Judgment Day has been stopped, the Terminator's mission did not. So a couple years after T2, it does find Sarah and John Connor, and it kills John Connor. So right in front of Sarah Connor, young Edward Furlong gets blown away. That's the very first of the movie. So no more John Connor. You jump ahead about 20-some years, and now all of a sudden, a new Terminator has showed up, and a new Protector has showed up. But how did this happen? Judgment Day was stopped. Well, yes, Judgment Day was stopped. But the lesson that we learned in the third movie was that the time stream's going to find a way. Judgment Day is inevitable. So something else has happened in the future. Even though it's not Skynet, something else has happened, and now someone else is being tracked down in the past that may or may not have a say in what happens in the future. They may or may not be a big part of the human element in the future that the robots want to destroy. So that's your basic setup for the movie. This movie, okay, if they had released this instead of Genesis, I think fans would have been a little more acceptable of it. But being that Genesis was a thing and then they're trying to reboot it again, I don't think fans are going to be as forgiving. I didn't think this movie was too bad. Again, if this would have been The Offering instead of Genesis, or even Salvation for that matter. I mean, I didn't hate Salvation. I think that fans would have been a little more accepting of it, and I definitely would have been. I do like what they're doing with this movie because, like the Halloween franchise, they've kind of just said, well, we're getting rid of this stuff, and this is where the story is taking place. We can do that. Fans were pretty accepting of the Halloween franchise doing that, but I think they were so far down the toilet that fans were ready to go back to the original setting, and you really should be here too. Granted, I don't think this one worked as well as the Halloween reset. I do think though that it's an acceptable reset. Even though I didn't love everything about it, and it's really predictable. The predictable nature of this movie, it's one of those things where they're trying to tell you parts of the story, but then they're just omitting saying things. Like someone will ask a question and then someone will go silent. It's like, gee, I wonder if they're hiding something. Of course, you're supposed to think that the Terminator or the Rev 9, technically it's not a Terminator, but it is, you know. It's funny how this is not supposed to be Skynet. It's supposed to be this other AI, but they still create like the same or at least similar type Terminators. Even though I will say one of the Terminators that they show in the future, I really dug. It was almost like a Terminator Doc Ock. It was kind of cool. But it's just funny how they kind of create the same thing. So you have this setup where, okay, this girl that's being hunted down is important. And of course, if you're a fan of the Terminator, you're supposed to think, well, she's probably going to have a kid that becomes the leader of the resistance. But they really hide that fact. And the twist, of course, is it's not the kid, it's her, right? It's really obvious from the start that this woman's going to be the leader of the resistance. And that leads to really the only cringeworthy moment for me, because as someone that just wants strong characters, I don't care if your character is male or female as long as they're a strong character. But when they try to tell you, when they drop this line, something along the lines of, you're not going to give birth to some man that saves the future. It's you that are going to save the future. And it's like, you could have just said, your child isn't going to save the future. It's you. It would have been that, again, small moment. It doesn't ruin the movie for me, but I'm just sitting there going, we're forcing that a little bit, right? So that moment to me was a little forced, even though I have no problem with her being the leader of the resistance, because of course you look at this girl and she doesn't look tough, and she doesn't look like your typical hero. And some people are like, well, she's just too young and pretty to be the hero. Well, a lot of people thought that of Linda Hamilton in the first Terminator, right? She was young and pretty, and then all of a sudden the next movie she's a Terminator killing badass, right? So you're getting that here. And Sarah Connor even makes the comment where she says, I was her once. She needs to, granted, I think this girl's journey to getting tough is a little quick because you only got one movie here, but I thought it worked because she's an unassuming hero. And granted, if you could see the Sarah Connor character, instead of being John Connor being the hero of the resistance, you could see it being Sarah Connor as well, right? Because of the changes she made in T2. So I was fine with that. So I was cool with that. I liked what they did with Arnold Schwarzenegger's T-800 character. He is playing another T-800 that was sent to the past before Skynet was destroyed. And I liked what they did with him. I liked that once a Terminator, because of course we learned in T2 they can't self-terminate. So we have this Terminator that has completed a mission, and then he's just there. He's there in our time for 20 some years. What would he do? And I like that they used that whole learning computer thing for him to learn about humanity and learn about family and things like that over 20 years. And what he ends up doing in the movie really worked for me. Granted, you kind of know where he's going to end up at the end. And it is pretty certain the swan song for Arnold Schwarzenegger in this franchise. And really, they needed to finish his... granted, he's been multiple characters. He's been, he's been a Terminator in just about every one of them, even a CG one in Salvation. Um, but they needed to finally give this character a swan song, and I thought this movie did a pretty good job, even though it's pretty obvious what they're gonna do with him. Um, I liked Gabriel Luna as the Rev 9 because he was the robot type character when he needed to be, but he could also drop the charm when his character needed to get somewhere or convince someone of something. Um, there's a scene, I think it's in one of the trailers, where he's going through a metal detector, and of course we know he's basically two Terminators. He's like a T-1000 wrapped around a T-800. And he's going through a metal detector, and he's like, I expect all sorts of bells and whistles because my body's a lethal weapon. And he's being a kind of smarmy and charming. And I liked what he did. I liked what they did with him. And I also liked that the T-1000 and T2, he didn't have to be this big muscle-bound character. He's just... he can pass off as like a regular guy. And then, of course, let's talk about Mackenzie Davis's Grace. A lot of people thought she was going to be another type of Terminator. She's not. She's an enhanced human. Honestly, for me, she's the weakest part of the movie. She reminded me a lot of the new type of Terminator that was turned from a human to a Terminator in Salvation. She reminded me of that character too much, and even what they did with her at the end of the movie was... I liked what they did with her overall, but I don't know. She was just probably the weakest part of the movie for me. I think mainly because they had this whole thing with her character where she's... this enhancement was only made for like short bursts, right? So she's only supposed to be able to do so much, and then her like power source starts to freak out. But that only came into play when the movie needed it to come into play. And it was fine, but again, she's probably the weakest part of the movie for me. But then again, I liked what they did with her story arc, with how they worked her in to the story of Danny, which is the girl that the Terminator's after. And of course, the best part, which I knew was going to be the best part, older, grizzled Sarah Connor, the returning Linda Hamilton, finally making right what they did wrong with T3, where they killed her off screen with cancer. Finally, we get Linda Hamilton back, and she's everything I wanted her to be. She's snarky and tough and mean, and she's got a chip on her shoulder since her son's been killed. She's basically, for the last 20 years, she's been getting coordinates from somewhere telling her where Terminators were going to show up, or where they're going to show up. And she goes and she destroys them. And that kind of leads her to where our other main characters are in this one. So yeah, Linda Hamilton was everything I hoped she would be in this. And she's definitely, for me, the best part of the movie. But that being said, and of course, her and Arnie are my two favorite parts. But then again, I'm an old school Terminator fan, so that's no real surprise. When it comes to, is this a good reboot / reimagining / continuation of the franchise? Yeah, I think so. It's not fantastic. It's really predictable. I knew who was going to make it at the end. I knew who was going to die. I knew where the story was going. I knew what the twist was with the character of Danny. It's no real surprise. There's no real surprises in this movie, and that's really a kind of a disappointment, because even though they do tease another one, they're basically saying, well, this new Judgment Day is going to happen someday. So I imagine if they do another one, it's going to be them trying to stop this new Judgment Day. But what are they going to do? It's going to be something similar to T2. We're going to have another Terminator come back in time. We're going to, it's going to be really the same thing. And in a way, they're going to, unless they find a different way to do it, which, again, they tried with Genesis and it just didn't work very well. It's going to seem like the same thing again. And I just don't know. Honestly, I think you could leave it here and be fine. But I have a feeling if this one makes enough, they'll do another one and maybe try to stop it there. But then again, if the whole thing of, Judgment Day is inevitable, like if we stop one but something else will rise up, well, I mean, you have that whole thing where it's never going to end, right? So who knows where they're going to go with it from there. Whether or not they'll even get to make another one, because I know it won the box office this weekend, but it was 30 million, which probably isn't what they were hoping for. But all in all, I didn't think it was that bad. Is it a rush to the theaters to go see? Probably not. That being said, it's a great return for Linda Hamilton. I really liked Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. I like the new Terminator. It's not a bad movie. Again, there's a few moments here and there where that it's predictable. And then again, there was the one moment of kind of cringe worthiness when it comes to the big reveal of you're the hero, not some man. But other than that, it's a decent movie. I thought it was not bad. And again, if they would have released a set of Genesis, I think fans would have been a little bit more accepting of it. That's going to be all for this edition of Talkin Movies. If you like what you've heard here, please subscribe to the Real Geno YouTube channel. Like this video. If you have anything to say about this movie, Terminator Dark Fate, or the Terminator franchise in whole, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below. Until next time, I'm your host, the Real Geno Reynolds. Hasta la vista, baby.